Now we need to understand instances in which, let's say we have our code base and our code base is going to interact with some third party or some external environment. Okay. So because now we understood in real life what is adapter, but let's try to understand with respect to now coding perspective, what are the situations in which adapter pattern actually comes into the picture. Okay. Situation that we are going to talk about is going to look something like this. Okay. That is, let's say adapter pattern ensures that our code base remains easily maintainable when it is dependent on third party libraries. Okay. So what adapter pattern will do is it is going to help us to make sure that our code base remains more or less consistent and maintainable, right? Whenever you are going to interact with the third party libraries, right? Now, in order to understand this, we need to ask us a few questions. Let's say you want to interact with a third party library. Let's say you are building the next big Book My Show and now you want to integrate a payment gateway. So the question that should come to your mind is, should your code base having core business logic directly talk to the third party? No. Why no? Due to multiple reasons. First reason is, let's say the third party that you are depending on, let's say if they make some changes to their APIs or make some changes to the libraries, then the code base where your core business logic is present, that code base needs to be changed. Let's take an example. Let's say this is your service layer inside your backend code base. The service layer generally contains the business logic. When I say layer, then I mean the service folder. All the files in the services folder is going to contain your core business logic altogether. Now let's say you want to integrate the Razorpay API. Now Razorpay is not prepared by BookMyShow, right? It's a third party library. Now, if let's say you directly communicate from your core business logic to the Razorpay API, what can be the problems? The problem will be, let's say currently the Razorpay API returns you an object like this. Let's say Razorpay API returns you a unique transaction ID, which is a string. Then it returns a transaction note, which is a string. Then it returns you the recipient email, which is a string. Okay, let's say currently it returns you this object. Cool. You will say, okay, that's great, right? You will use this object in your code base. And probably based on this, you are going to write some unit tests as well. Now, because your business logic layer is directly interacting with the Razorpay API, this code is now very tightly coupled. Why? Now think about it. If Razorpay changes their response structure, that now this transaction ID is no more a string. Okay, this transaction ID is no more a string. Let's say it's an object again. It's an object altogether. But in your database, you still store transaction ID as a string. Now, what will happen is, previously because transaction ID was string returned by Razorpay, you also had transaction ID as string. And your whole core business logic is based on transaction ID being a string. But now they have changed transaction ID to an object. And let's say this object has a property, let's say value or some other properties altogether. Now what will happen? You have to now change your core business logic, because now you are going to get transaction ID as an object. First thing. So here you have to process this transaction ID object and fetch the transaction ID string, right? So here you have to write the logic of the conversion of object to string. However you want to write, doesn't matter. That logic doesn't matter as of now. Apart from that, your unit tests are going to change, because your unit tests were expecting the response to come as a string. Third thing, you might have a question that why we not also store transaction ID as an object in our database? Because maybe your whole legacy database was all having transaction ID as a string. You cannot immediately change your database structure just because Razorpay changed something altogether, right? So this becomes a very tightly coupled code base. And let's go even one step further. Now let's say Razorpay went bankrupt. Razorpay went bankrupt. And now you have to interact with a new payment gateway, Stripe. New payment gateway, Stripe. Now what? From your business layer, you were calling all Razorpay libraries and APIs. Now your whole business layer has to now interact with Stripe. You have to change the whole business layer logic. You have to change all of your test. Do you understand the amount of maintenance that your software engineers might have to go through if you make your code base tightly coupled to third parties? You can still make your code base tightly coupled to your own microservices or something, but it is never a good idea to make your code base tightly coupled with third party APIs, because third parties can change. I'm not sure for how long you have been coding or known coding, but if you have ever integrated Facebook login somewhere, then Facebook used to support earlier some different kind of APIs. It was a different way to actually integrate Facebook, and then later they migrated to a new set of APIs. A lot of companies that were dependent on Facebook had to migrate also. But think about those companies who had to do the migration where they had a very tightly coupled code, and then you have to make all of these changes here. This would have been really bad, right? Think about with respect to PhonePe. PhonePe was previously dependent on Yes Bank. Later PhonePe integrated ICICI and Axis also. Think about PhonePe's logic, okay? Think about PhonePe's logic. If you are a company like PhonePe, previously you had to just interact with Yes Bank. Now, because Yes Bank collapsed and a lot of things happened, now PhonePe has to also interact with few more banks, because they want more availability. They can't depend just on one bank. So now they depend on Axis Bank also and ICICI Bank also. Now think about the business logic of PhonePe. Do you think the business logic of PhonePe should change if a new bank has been introduced? Because the functionality is still the same, right? You can do UPI transactions on PhonePe. Now the underlying bank that is enabling it should not change the business logic of PhonePe, right? Because later, let's say PhonePe might onboard new banks also. Think about it like this. PhonePe in 2016, 17, 18 was just an app to do UPI transaction. Now PhonePe supports insurance, stock market things, mutual funds, right? Bill payments, a lot of things. Now just think about it. Now let's say PhonePe want to integrate with SBI also. So are they going to rewrite all of their logic? UPI transaction, mutual fund, insurance, bill payment, everything with respect to SBI also, because a few customers might be on SBI. No, right? They cannot rewrite their whole business logic because they have onboarded a new bank, because bank onboarding will be now a common thing for them. So they have to prepare their code base such that there should be a different layer that should handle the bank interaction, and we should only depend on that layer. So how internally things should work is, your business logic should actually depend on an intermediary layer. Your business logic should actually depend on an intermediate layer. And now this intermediate layer has the responsibility to connect to whatever third party you need to connect to. Third party, right? Then whatever third party is going to be called, your business logic will actually call to this intermediate layer. This intermediate layer will see, okay, my business logic supports data in this format. My third party supports data in some other format. Let's do some conversion. Then your third party gave you a response in a particular format. You're going to give the response back in the format that your own core business logic understands. In this way, what will happen is your core business logic will never need any refactoring. All the refactoring that you have to do is on this intermediate layer. This intermediate layer we call as the adapter layer. This intermediate layer we call as the adapter layer. That's, I would say, the main primary purpose of the adapter layer, right? So technically, if PhonePe would have taken a longer vision, then PhonePe services should not directly call Yes Bank APIs. PhonePe services should have a adapter layer. That adapter layer should actually handle how Yes Bank's conversion should happen, how ICICI conversion should happen, data conversion, how Axis data conversion should happen, so on and so forth. This is the main crux of adapter pattern.